Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us back on the Mended Collective. I'm Rebekah Bardoel.
I'm Jordan Danser.
Nice for you to join us here today. Today we're going to talk about engaging and interacting on social media and how to do that in a godly way.
Yeah, so there's that's something that's totally in our lives, right? I mean, social is here and it's here to stay. And so how do we navigate that? Do we just have to do whatever we want and never think about it? Do we just totally retract and never engage at all? Is there a middle ground here? So how do we start to think about this?
Yeah, I think the first thing to realize is that, everything that we're putting out on social media, everything that we're sharing or posting or liking or commenting, that's a form of communication.
Yeah.
This is a form of me saying, hey, I am putting this out there for the world to see. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. And we need to be careful about that because this is governed, I think, by the rules of communication or the principles we see of communication in the Bible.
Yeah. It's not like the Bible is just like, that it doesn't have anything to say about this, right? It's not like this is some 21st century invention and the Bible is just like, well, just do your best and it's free range. I think those principles about communication definitely apply here, and we need to keep those in mind.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Ephesians 4:29, let's read that. It says, "Let no corrupt talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up as fit the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." So we need to think about that. We need to think about our sharing, our posting, our likes, our comments on social media in the lens or the frame of what is good and giving grace to those who hear and see.
Yeah, nothing that tears down is corrupt. If you think about corrupt, like it's decaying. It's making things not as whole as they were. Right. Whereas we're ministering grace and we're giving a gift and we're building people up. So, what sort of things do we need to think about in order to do that?
Right. So I think the first thing is, this is not anonymous. It's really easy to put up this front or realize that there's one step removed from the world, but in reality, you're engaged and people know who this is coming from and people see what you're thinking, what your thoughts are, and what you're posting. So it's not anonymous, and we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, and so as people of God, I mean, we bear the image of God and the image of Christ, and so we're representing Him to the world, and we're showing what God is like, and so. Let's not think that we're detached from that some way, because as Christians we're to act in such a way that when people see us, they see Christ, and so let's not give ourselves any trouble there, and let's not pull His name through the mud in what we do.
Yeah, I agree. And in the same vein, are you being real? What kind of image are you portraying?
Yeah, there's definitely a heart
media?
thing that's going on here.
Right? Yeah. So are you portraying the image of Christ that you're supposed to on social media? Or are you putting up a mask? Are you putting up a front that you're trying to see what you want people to see or what's going to get the likes?
Yeah, you're crafting things. And there's the phenomenon of the social media influencer is so interesting to me because it's one of these things I never saw coming.
Right.
Right? Like some of this stuff like technology development, you can sort of see that stuff. Like VR, I mean, you could kind of see it coming. The social media influencer I didn't see where you post things to get people to like your page and draw their attention so that you can get companies to endorse you and share your things. And there's tons of money that's spent on this. It's a $1 billion industry. We've got to be careful that that's not us.
Right.
We don't need to be people who are trying to be dishonest and trying to live one way on our social media accounts and our lives are completely different. That's dishonest.
Yes. I think about the New Testament when it's talking about some of the Pharisees who made the phylacteries broad and built up so everyone could see. And I just think about how we're not called to be that. We're called to be humble in our mindset. We're called to be lowly, and making sure we're doing all that on social media can be difficult at times.
Yeah.
Because we get so caught up in, everyone liked my post, or everyone liked what I had to say.
Hit.
Yes, everyone liked what I had to say. But we need to be careful that that's not what we're doing it for. We're doing it maybe to stay engaged with people that we know, maybe to share some of our life, and I don't think that's a problem, but we need to be careful with how much of a mask are we putting up? How much of a front are we putting up?
Yeah, and I think, something you really hit on, I really liked that idea of the Pharisees, thinking about the religious mask you're putting on. I mean, that's what a hypocrite means, is to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And I mean, as it comes to crafting an image, I mean, it's not just about wearing athleisure and drinking sparkling water and stuff like that stuff, right? It's a lot further than that.
Yes.
And we can put up a religious mask to portray ourselves as spiritual, and we've got it all together, and the perfect family, and behind the scenes things are just crumbling.
Totally agree.
And we shouldn't be dishonest about that.
Right. A lot of us maybe have something in our bio that's like God first, or I'm a Christian, or things like that. And that's not a problem, but what does your social media reflect? Does it actually bear the image of Christ? Does it actually reflect, hey, that person is a Christian, they're doing everything they can to follow Christ? Or does it reflect, the hypocritical view of a Christian standpoint.
Yeah, well, I think too, not just that whole, because we're sort of talking about like this curating and putting exactly what we want on there so people see us this specific way. But I think there's also a danger too in terms of like just putting too much and just really oversharing, right? And some people are like, well, and they get to that point where they're like, oh, I've been going for the endorphin hit and the feeling of likes and all that stuff. And they're like, okay, I'm going to just go the other way to the other side of the fence. And I'm just going to share everything and I'm genuine and it's me. And it's frankly, it's just crafting an image of genuineness. But I think that can be really problematic. Do you see that as a problem sometimes?
I definitely do. And I think sometimes that can come down to pride, and that can get to a point to where it's like, oh, it's all about me. It's all about my life. It's all about what I think and my opinions. And if we get to that point, friends, that's getting into sin, frankly, and we need to be careful of that. Sure,
yeah. I mean, there's tons of counsel from in the Bible about speech and just not speaking too much, right? Wherever words are plenty, there's no lack of sin, the Proverbs tell us, right? So like we just need to be really careful, because if you talk too much, you're going to say something dumb and something sinful. And so we just need to be mindful of that as well. And I think there's also just like a respect of other people's privacy and things like this in those interactions too.
Yeah, so as we keep going, let's think about too our audience.
Sure.
There are age ranges aplenty on social media today. I can think of my little cousin who's on social media, and I can think of my grandma who's on social media, right? Like there's plenty of age ranges on social media, and so that means your audience is specific and you need to be careful what you're posting.
Yeah, and to be mindful of what might be normal for your friends may not be very normal for other people, right? Acronyms or hashtags or trends that are totally fine for millennials and Gen Z, and we're like with it, we get it. Like someone who's older, who's a brother or sister in Christ who's older, or maybe a family member, they see that and they're like, this kid has lost their ever-loving mind. And you haven't. Well, I mean, you might have, but that's not, this thing isn't you losing your mind. It's just different. Yeah. And so you got to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I think there's this concept maybe too of like not causing other people to stumble in their faith. You may be good and fine with doing a certain thing on social media that's easy for you and you don't have a problem with that sin. But if you're posting about it and there's someone else who maybe does have a problem with that sin, or not even that sin, but that act
that activity
that's going to cause them or lead them into sin, we need to be careful of that. We need to be aware that this is a platform that we're creating and that people are seeing. And so what are they seeing and what are we leading them to?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really important too is because, I mean, depending on what social platform you're on, a lot of times there's a death of nuance. And there's, they're sharing, and it really happens with sharing, I think happens a lot, where we see something in there that we kind of latch onto and we don't really think about all the context, or we don't think about other perspectives, or
where this is coming from.
Yeah, or it's kind of rude. Depending on what group you follow. I mean, there's been people that have shared stuff that's, it's fine content, and I click on it, and the page, I'm like, oh my goodness, wow. And so you want to be careful of that, because it's so totally unfair. But whenever you post something and you share something, you're giving some level of endorsement in a lot of people's minds to what you're sharing. So just be mindful of that sort of thing.
Right. Like you want to think about, do I really approve of this concept? If I was going to go present this to someone else, would I encourage it? Would I try to get people to like it too? Would I try to get people on board with it? Or is it something that maybe just I thought was a really good idea and so I'm going to share it, but maybe I don't give my full stamp of approval on it? And so if that's the case, maybe we need to back off a little bit.
Yeah, no, I had a brother call me on this recently where I was sharing something, and it was like a really general principle of something, and I was sharing it with a specific context in mind where this applied, and he read that and read it with a totally different context, and he's like, hold on, dude, you cannot be saying that. And we came to an agreement on it, but it was just a really good teaching moment for me to remember that we're dealing with people from a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different backgrounds, and we need to be sensitive to that when we share things.
I totally agree. So really just the overall concept is, what image are you bearing on social media? Are you being careful with how you interact on social media and being mindful of what you post, comment, and share with a biblical perspective? So thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thanks, guys.